Okay, this drawing video is going to focus on the ellipse. I'm going to show a number of different methods for drawing the ellipse. Okay, so what I have here on the paper so far is basically a major and a minor axis here in the first instance. Likewise, for the other ellipses, I've got a major and a minor axis, and the two down below, a major and a minor axis, major, minor axis. And the last one is not going to be, strictly speaking, an ellipse. It's going to be, obviously, look like an ellipse, but basically you're just taking it from a major axis here. So you're given the major axis, not the minor axis, but it's going to give basically something that looks similar to an ellipse. So the first method obviously is going to be referred to as the circles method. Okay, and what you're simply doing is you're going to use the obviously the intersection point here of the major and the minor axis as a springing point, and you're going to use as a radius half the minor, and you're going to draw a circle, and then you're going to use as a second radius half the major, and then you're going to draw a circle. So the position for these particular axes, basically from the top of the sheet, okay, from the top of the sheet down 18 millimeters to this major axis line, down 18 millimeters. Now into this point here, the intersection point, if you move in 100 millimeters to this point here, so down 80 and in 100. Okay, now the major axis is 120 millimeters. 120 millimeters, so it's 60 millimeters each side here. And the minor axis is 80 millimeters, so it is 40 millimeters each side here. The second position, okay, the second position, you're simply moving away 60 millimeters from this end point here of the major axis in the first one to the second one. Okay, and it is the same major and minor axis that is going to be used on the second one. So, to focus on the first one here. So I've got my springing point here, which is the intersection of the major and the minor axis. And what I'm simply going to do is I'm simply going to set my compass, first of all, for the minor axis. Half the minor axis, actually, as a radius. And I'm going to swing that around. Okay, so I have my first circle. Then half the major axis, and I swing that around, half the major. I swing that around. Okay, and I get my second circle. Okay, now after I have those two circles established, then just simply using a 60-30 degree set square, I'm going to divide those circles into 12 equal sections, okay, or segments. So 60 degrees, 60 degrees, 30 degrees, and 30 degrees. Now, I already, with the major and the minor axis, have 4 points already established on this ellipse. So the top point here and the bottom point are going to be 2 points on the ellipse, the two extreme points on the minor axis, and the left-hand side and right-hand side of the major axis are the two extreme points of the major axis. So what I want to establish are the points in between. Now, because I've divided the two circles into 12, I'm going to establish 12 points. I've already got 4 points established. I'm going to establish the other 8 points. Okay, so very simply what I do is, with this, where the 60 degrees hits the outer circle, the larger radius circle, the major axis circle, I basically then, I simply bring those points down. So bring this point down. Now the corresponding 60 degree line where it hits the smaller circle, I bring across. Okay, that gives me 1 point here. Likewise, I do on the other side. Right, so I basically bring the 60 degree line down, and the point out to meet it, where the 60 degree line hits the inner circle. I do likewise with the 30 degree line. And I bring out where that 30 degrees hits the inner circle, bring it out, and I get my other point here. Now if I just mark in those points here, I have 1 point here, 1 point here, 1 point here, 1 point here. Now I can just simply connect those points around and I establish the ellipse here. Okay, now I can do likewise, I'll do it on the bottom here as well. So I'll have a full ellipse in place. Now, if I wanted to have, say for instance, a number of points in between these 60 degrees and 30 degree lines, okay, I could simply, for instance, just to give an example, use my 45 degree set square to establish the angle in between the 30 and 60 degrees here. Okay. Now, that 45 degree line will do the exact same for me. So where it hits the outer curve, I bring down, and do likewise on the other side here, where the 45 degree line hits the outside curve, bring down, and then I bring that 45 degree line where it hits the inside curve out to meet it, and out to meet it here. And I get 2 more points here and here. Now instead of dividing it into 12 and having 12 points around the ellipse, I can actually increase my accuracy of drawing this ellipse by simply again replicating the 15 degree intervals used by the 45 here, and basically use that to establish what the other points would be in between. So I simply do that by again getting my compass and going to where the distance between the 45 and the 60, or the 45 and the 30 degree line, I simply get one of those lengths there, okay, on the outside here, and I strike that off again, 1, 2 off the 60 degree line here, and likewise on the bottom from the 30 degree line here, the outside of the curve, strike it down and strike it down here as well. Now, what I've established there are basically 15 degree intervals. So again, I just need to go through the center point here, and I'll have established over on this curve here. So through here, here, again, likewise here, and here. Now, I can simply now bring down this, which would be a 75 degree line here, bring it down, and again correlate the point, bring it across where that same angle 75 degree line hits. I get another point here. Okay, so I do it on the other side as well. Bring this point down, and this point across. Do the same for here. So this point on the outside here, the 15 degree line here, bring it down, and then bring the points on the inner circle across. So if I put those points in here, I have this point here, and this point here, and this point here. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I have 13 points here going right around to by way of the semi-ellipse here. Okay, now I'm going to just simply do the same now on the bottom, and before I then proceed to draw it in by way of hard lines. Okay, so these are all the points of the ellipse that I've established, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw in again the circumference of the different circles I've drawn in there, and I'm going to again use a green pen to draw in the outline of the circle. What we have now are basically the minor axis circle, the major axis circle. We have the division, the green lines divided using the 30-60 degree set square. The grey lines basically are the other 15 degree intervals. So you've got 45 degrees, 75 degrees and 15 degrees. Going through the center and basically establishing these other points. So I'm dropping down from the outer circle, dropping all those points down and bringing where the same angle hits it on the minor axis. I bring them out to meet those points, those drops. So I established the different points on the circumference. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw that in, lightly connecting the points, and then I'll again use ink and a French curve just to establish that as a hard line. Now, what I'm going to do now is draw it in as a hard line. Ellipse drawn in. Okay, so you've got the major axis, the minor axis, okay, and you've got division of the 360 degrees with regards to the two circles. I've used 24 different intervals using 30-60 degree set square and a 45 degree set square, and then getting the 15 degree interval here and stepping it off each side from the 60 and from the bottom of the 30 to establish the other points. I simply, where those divisions hit the outside circle, the major axis circle, I bring them points, drop the points down and bring them up, and then where they hit the same angles hit the inside circle, the minor axis circle, I bring them across to their corresponding angle, okay, and then I establish the points on the ellipse. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to shade in the ellipse itself, okay. Okay, so that's referred to as the circles method, okay, and you've got your ellipse here. The second method then is going to be using the major axis and the minor axis and establishing what's referred to as Trammel points. But before I go on to the next one, I'm just going to simply remind you about this particular the particular lines I've drawn in here. A lot of the lines between by way of the ink pens, okay, the green and the red and so forth, they're quite hard, so a lot of these are just going to be construction lines. So when you're drawing them, these construction lines should be light. I'm only darkening them in for obviously videoing purposes. Okay, so try and keep these particular lines, the construction lines, light, and all you want is to be heavy when you're drawing it in is the actual ellipse itself. Okay, so the next one, as I say, is called the Trammel method. So again, what we have here is basically the minor axis and the major axis. And what we do is we get a piece of paper and we establish two important pieces of information. So we put the piece of paper to the top of the minor axis there, okay, and we get half the minor axis, and we do the same then for the major axis. We get the major axis there and we mark what is half the major. So we have half the minor axis and we have half the major axis, and they're all taken from one point here, the end here. Okay, so again I'm just going to use a pencil here initially just to establish the points. So what you'll notice when I keep these 2 points on the axis, between the minor axis and the major axis, so I'm starting off here, okay, so I've got my points by way of the 2 points here. As you can see, if I swivel them along the points that they're meant to swivel, okay, I establish the point. So I start off here. So if I start off with this point here, you can see this is half the minor axis here, and we've got half the major axis on the same axis by way of this axis here. Okay, now as we pull it around and keep these 2 points on the axes here, okay, all I have to do is mark the end of the piece of paper. So I keep moving it around and I can mark as many points as I want. I'm just marking the end of the piece of paper, okay, keeping these 2 points on the axes. Keep marking around, okay. And as I mark around, just keeping those 2 points on the axis, on the 2 axes I should say, right, and basically just keeps pulling it around, and eventually it will hit the end. The end of the major axis. Okay. Now, again, if I just put these in red here, so I've automatically got 4 points on the ellipse. I've got the major axis points, the 2 extreme points here, and the top and bottom of the minor axis. But all of these points now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, as many points as I want from the end of the piece of paper. Okay, I've established now how the ellipse moves along this quarter here. Now to do the other side, all that I'm simply doing is I'm moving the other way. So again, if I want to start from the top here, I can do. All that I'm simply doing is on the end point here, as I swivel it, these 2 points along both the axes, I keep those 2 points on it. I'm just going to fold this up at the end so it's easier for me to maneuver there. So that's the way I have the tag up on the bottom. So basically what I'm doing is from the top point there, I'm simply moving these 2 points along the axes and marking the end of the piece of paper. Now again, I can see these points here, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now if I want to just mark anywhere in between there, I can. I can mark as many points as I want, okay, around it. So I'll do the same on the bottom now. So again, I'm going to start over this end here and move around. So I'm simply swiveling it in between the axes on the top here and the side. So this point here, mark the end. Okay, if I want to go back and just put another point in between those, again, just keep the 2 points on the axis, and then swivel the points. So again, maneuver that around. Now, all that I simply have to do is connect those points using a pencil. Now, for me personally, I think this is the most accurate way of drawing an ellipse in technical drawing. Okay, because you establish as many points as you want in order to establish the true shape of the ellipse. Now, I'm going to then draw this particular method. I'm going to actually now draw the result of the ellipse in black ink. Okay, so using a French curve. Okay, so that is my ellipse drawn in with black ink, and again I'm simply just going to shade the ellipse in brown with a brown colouring pencil. Now, if I'm in a workshop environment and I want to use this particular method in order just to set out an ellipse, and there's a way of doing it, and I will show you in a later video how to do it with string and either a few screws or nails in order to establish the particular points you need to establish in order to tie the string to. Now, how you establish those points, you need two focal points. So again, what we did here with regards to obviously half the major by half the minor here with regards to the piece of paper. Again, what I'm going to use is the compass here. I'm simply going to get half the major axis here, and I'm going to half the major axis there, and from the top of the minor axis here, I'm simply going to scribe an arc here and here. Now I'm going to I could come down to the bottom here and I'll get the same points here and here. Okay, but all I simply want to do is mark those points. So I'm simply going to use obviously a green pen again, just to indicate those particular compass marks here. Okay, so here. So what this gives me are 2 points. 2 points here and here. And those particular points are called focal points. Okay, that's a focal point. And this is a focal point. Now, when I'm using a string and I'm setting out in the workshop environment, what I simply do is I put a nail or screw in this focal point and on this focal point. And I also put a nail or screw on this top point of the minor axis. And then I simply tie the string as a triangle from the focal point up to the end of the minor axis here, back down to the focal point, make it tight, the string, and then I simply lift up this point here and I use a pencil in the string and I draw, keeping the string nice and tight, and it will give me the outline of the ellipse. Okay, and it's based on a triangle. So the particular triangle, again, if I just use green here, any triangle basically from the focal point, so that triangle there, which is basically how the string would be, when it's tightened. If I maneuver that point, so again it's based on just the law of triangles. If I bring this line here over to here, okay, as I move the pencil around, the string maneuvers, and again I get to this point, it's at this point, yeah? So I can do a series of different triangles as long as I keep from focal point, right, to any point along this elliptical arch here, and it will give me the same length of any of these triangles. These two sides in the triangle will be the same length for any of the triangle there, okay? So that's the Trammel method. So I'm just going to just write those two methods down before we proceed to the other methods. So this here is called the circle or circles method. And this here is called the Trammel method. And it's all to establish an ellipse.